From the Nocturnal, pleasure to meet you.
Dano.
Not my real name, but
What's your real name?
It's Daniel, but
Daniel, but Dano is like more.
Yeah, if you're mad at me, you can call me Daniel. That's
like
how
Dano.
I know.
It actually
There you
makes
go.
people want to talk to you.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
it.
Well, now
it's
you're
good.
here talking to me.
Yeah.
So I just saw real life Amy meet a lot of the actors for the very first time, and I couldn't really hear what they're saying, but I could feel like the emotional weight. So I wonder, for you, what was it like? Taking your cues from her. I know she was on set with you. And what maybe did she teach you about the character that you don't usually get on other films?
She was so great with me because she taught me a lot about her compassion and her empathy and humanity. One of the very first conversations I had with her is I asked her why she worked as a night nurse, and she said she wanted her girls, she was a stay-at-home mom, to feel or to think that they had, she was a single mom. She wanted her girls to think that they had a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
So she worked all night long, taking care of others at the hospital. She'd come home and go do the grocery shopping and the housework while her kids were at school, and then take care of them when they're out of school. So she was really at no moment taking care of herself. And I learned a lot about that from actually talking to her.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. Appreciate it, and super excited to see the movie.
It's such a pleasure. How are you?
I'm really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. So obviously this is a true story that many people have heard about. It's authentic. It's very scary a bit. What was the process like in getting into this character?
So for me, the process is always long. I always need a long runway, and so a lot of it was meeting the real Amy. So the character Jessica plays, who was just extraordinary with talking to me about the intimacy of her friendship and the specifics of that, and the real love that she had, but also that this man had seemingly an amazing humanity, but then there was this other side that she met twice, and it was a different human being. So that was a real insight for me.
Absolutely. What would you say those conversations taught you about life and your outlook on this story and these people?
Well, one of the things I found intriguing was so often violence is attacked with violence. And a kind of what I found amazing about Amy's story was that actually violence was ended through compassion and reminding this man who was doing horrific things of his humanity. Yeah.
This suit, really quick, this suit is so cool. Tell me
Thank
a
you.
little about it.
Well, it's made by someone called Margella, and it's got air vents, so you can keep cool. You don't want to get too hot at a premiere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I would say that, I'm always proudly on the shoulders of Dogma, but Dogma is always proudly on the shoulders of Cassavetes. So it's a circle. I think I'm bringing some Bergman to the table, and some Fincher, and some 70s great movie making, like, I'm on the shoulders of Clute, I'm on the shoulders of Kramer versus Kramer, so I definitely feel that it's the naturalism that I bring. But I'm not sure it's all Scandinavian. I even would say that there's a lot of Korean naturalism out there that I am inspired by.
Like what Korean?
Well, if you look at both director Bong and director Park, they're both in that world. There's always a ghost, but it is in the world we live in, and I think that's basically, I want to try to ground the stories so they connect with the audience in the world we already know.
Did you get to see Decision to Leave? I know you just brought up Park.
I did not yet, but I am very much looking forward to it.
Unrelated, you brought up Cassavetes. What are your thoughts on Killing of a Chinese Bookie?
Well, I saw Killing of a Chinese Bookie in two versions. Okay. There's the Criterion version where the opening is Cassavetes, and then there is the original version. And I actually have to say that the producer's version of that one is better. That's just a better opening.
I agree to disagree on that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think it's a little messy, but still I love it,
Yeah. I always say more is better, but maybe you're more discerning as a director. So I just got to see a lot of really cool moments of people meeting the real life, people behind the actual story. Yeah. How did you feel being, in charge, the steward of this, taking this very sensitive, traumatic story for a lot of people? The real people are still alive for the most part. What type of responsibility was that? Does that differ at all from your work on Mindhunter, or did you feel a similar sense of responsibility?
Well, I think that every time we as storytellers enter the darkness and start to tell true stories about real living people's lives and traumas, there is a responsibility to find a good human reason to tell that story. In this case, the heroism and the courage of Amy was that reason. Without her humanness, without her insisting on human values, on friendship, of love, there would be no story to tell. And basically that I felt was my responsibility. We changed a lot of stuff. We never mentioned names on any of the victims or their families. We never one-to-one duplicated any of the incidents where Charlie Cullen killed anybody. We tried to stay away from that and just be fascinated and mesmerized by the fact that a whole system for so many years didn't stop him.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Excited to see the movie. And just want to say that Another Round was like my favorite movie of that year. It got me through the pandemic.
You know, it's a little surreal, I think, for all of us. Like, I didn't get to meet her on set. I did get to meet Dan and Tim on set. But yeah, man, I mean, she's... I was just telling her, like, I've been a patient. My father worked in the hospital for many years. And so to know that that kind of activity can go on when you're in such a vulnerable position is kind of nuts. And so that was great to actually see the lady that had the courage to take down the system. Like, a lot of people don't have that kind of courage in their day-to-day job. They go like, this shit's crazy, but I'm not going to do anything about it. So props to her.
So, having just met her, looking back at Jessica's performance, you're like, wow, she got it. So, like,
well, Jessica's a beast, so, you know, there's that.
Right.
And then, you know, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to watch it for the first time myself. But just being on set with her and watching her work, and getting to meet Amy, but it's, you know, it's to be expected, I suppose, right?
Yeah. So you were mentioning your own family and personal experience with hospitals. Like, what of that did you bring in to your performance?
Well, I wasn't in a hospital. There's that. I played the police, so we were you know, part of chasing down the truth. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Excited to see the movie, and it was a really pleasure meeting you and talking to you.
What's your name?
Dano.
Dan, you said that, like Paul Dano. Good to meet you.
Like Paul Dano.
What exactly in particular drew you to this story?
Well, Charles Cullen, the serial killer, wouldn't speak to anybody, but then he started talking to me. And once we began speaking, I understood that it was much more than a simple case of a serial killer being caught. It actually was something that had gone on for 16 years, 9 different hospitals and a nursing home, and that story was completely unknown, was going to disappear. So I really had to tell that story at that point.
Now, this was a man who would not speak to anyone, but out of all people, he chose you.
Yeah.
How did that feel, and what do you think it was about you that drew him to you?
Yeah, I don't take it personally. I think the way I spoke to him and the questions I asked appealed to him, worked for him. You know, we really didn't start off talking about murder. We talked about him and and the fact that he wanted to donate a kidney. And through that, I got to know the man and his mode of thinking. And through that, I got to understand where else I should be looking for the real heart of this story. So I think that's the reason that we spoke to each other.
Do you think these conversations taught you a little something about humanity and about people? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Charlie himself would say, the other Charlie, would say that, you know, what you think about his story, the way you judge it, it really depends on what you think people are capable of. And I think mostly what I think now is that there really aren't monsters in the world. That's really actually very comforting to think there are monsters because they're not us, but those monsters really are us. And we see that in Ukraine now, and we've seen that certainly in this case.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, what stood out to me, the story was first before the direction, right? Because we didn't get to the direction until we got to the story. But I think that what stood out to me from the story is the fact that we have a serial killer, that there's no blood, no guts, no real inherent violence, and yet there's 300 some odd murders. Right. And we have someone who's a superhero who used humanity to solve this violence with humanity as opposed to violence with violence, which is what we're used to seeing in a serial killer movie, right? It's, you know, cat and mouse, or, you know, chase scene, and there's always violence, but this was just friendship and compassion. And I think if we could bring that to the world, maybe, you know, we could send some messages to help stop some of what's going on and make the world a better place.
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally know Tobias's work through Another Round and The Hunt, and just very kind of naturalistic, more grounded situations. and now he's doing this kind of crazier story. So maybe you could say what does he bring to the table? What did you and the team see in him? And
he brought it all. I mean, when you mention things like a hijacking a war, the hunt, you know, it's the realism, right? You know, it's using real soldiers in a war. It's, you know, and you know what he brings to this is something I don't think anybody else could have done. What Tobias brings to The Good Nurse is just his compassion, his humanity. He found that story and that edge to, you know, solve violence with humanity and compassion. Whereas, you know, other people in other studios want to say, "Oh, make it more thrillery, make it more slashery, make it more genre," you know. And he said, "No, keep it grounded in humanity." And I think that's a really special thing. And I think it's a hard thing for a filmmaker to go against that grain, which he did.
So I just got to see Malik meet Amy over there, and it was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you have a lot of those moments of the real life people meeting the actors who portrayed them, and what was that like having to deal with this? You know,
I mean, I made like Mother and Black Swan and The Wrestler and Noah, so the real life people meeting them was impossible. But it was nice. On White Boy Rick was the only time I had it with Matthew McConaughey visiting White Boy Rick Wershey in prison. But this was really a special in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
You know, seeing you know, the real Amy on set with Jessica and the two of them meeting and see how great they've gotten along. It's just incredible. It just goes to show what a great job Tobias has done with the film and with the material in recreating, you know, Amy's life.
Best producer on earth.
All right, you got that on record.
Yeah.
It's official. All right, first of all, congratulations. Really excited to see the movie. I was wondering, for you, what was your favorite part of working on the movie? What's the biggest takeaway for you?
Well, of course, meeting Jessica Chastain, Eddie Redmayne, and Tobias Lindholm, that was absolutely amazing. And when we weren't filming, when we were just hanging out with Tobias, we went with Haley and some of his family, and we went mini golfing in New York.
Did he teach you any Danish words?
He did not, which I'm going to ask him if he can.
Well, they speak better English than we do sometimes.
Yeah.
So, what did, as a director, what did Tobias teach you as a young actor, or Jessica, or anyone give you advice as someone like at your stage in your career now?
Well, when I was working with Jessica Chastain on set one day, we were talking about how to emotionally get there in some of those emotional scenes. And I said, it's like you have to be the role. And we worked off of that, and we came up with, you don't have to act the role, be the role.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well said. All right, thanks so much, Alex.
Thank
Really appreciate
you.
it. Excited to see the movie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Now, this is obviously a very intense, crazy story. What was it like adapting it for the screen?
It was really difficult. I was very lucky. We had an excellent book written by Charles Graeber that I managed to kind of get him and all his research. And then I had
It's okay.
I had a lot of help from the real Amy, from the real cops and everyone. So it was difficult, but I had the resources to do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just talking to your producer and also Malik, and I saw these moments of meeting the real life people for the very first time, and it just seemed like a great emotional weight. What was that like, taking this real story, this real trauma, and any special sense of responsibility you had, and how did that feel?
I mean, it's always intimidating to be playing a living person,
right?
Who's going to see the film, and you just pray that you don't offend them, upset them, that you do them justice, that they feel their portrayal that you're offering is okay. And I just bumped into the man I played, and he said thank you. And I was incredibly relieved that he liked it. That's a very intimidating.
For the first time?
No. I met him when we were filming.
Okay.
We talked, and he was very gracious and supportive. But he hadn't seen the film. Now he's seen the film, and he liked it. So that's a giant relief. My other concern about this film is, which was immediately alleviated when I met Tobias and spoke with him about it. But you don't ever want to be glorifying a depraved character. And that was clearly not the intention or the ambition of this film. I think if you see the film, you realize it's not even really a serial killer film. It's a film about human relationships. It's not really preoccupied with the mentality or the background or the history of the serial killer. It's really more about the hero who helped bring him to justice. So I thought that was an interesting take, an interesting angle. A lot of true crime, a lot of serial killer genre films made. This one, I would say, is kind of unto itself in terms of its tone and genre.
Yeah. So going on the tone, with Tobias, I know him from his work with Vinterberg, like The Hunt and Another Round. Just so like naturalistic, feels real. Like, how does he bring that as a director to his actors? Like, you know, let's make this real. Like, what's that like working with someone like that?
I mean, that's always the ambition, and most of the work that I've done has been reality-based. Not hyped up, not really naturalistic style is what I prefer the most. Tobias is one of the masters of that. You know, the whole Scandinavian filmmaking school is very, very grounded, very real, very human. It's not polished and glorified and hyped. And, you know, I knew that going into it was going to be that, and that was really an appeal to me. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm super excited to see the film, and it was a pleasure. No, well, in 20 minutes or an hour, however much longer the carpet is. But,
all right, enjoy.
All right, it was a pleasure.